The face of reality TV now faces reality behind bars. Once the king of collectibles, Rick Harrison is now a convicted criminal. From priceless pirate gold to hidden offshore accounts, his empire was built on more than just deals. Brace yourself as we are discussing Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars, sentenced to life imprisonment. Okay, so what's going on with Rick Harrison from Pawn Stars? Is he really facing life in prison? That's what a bunch of people online started saying, and fans are freaking out. Now, if you've watched Pawn Stars, you know Rick. He's the serious guy with all the knowledge, always calling it how it is, no BS. The guy basically is the show. So hearing that he might be in major legal trouble? Yeah, nobody saw that coming. For years, we've watched him run his Las Vegas pawn shop, buying rare stuff, haggling like a pro, and keeping the shop running smoothly through all kinds of chaos. But now, suddenly, his name is tied to something way more serious, like prison serious. So here's the big question. What did Rick supposedly do to end up facing life behind bars? Is this even real, or just another crazy internet rumor? Let's break it down, look at where this all started, and figure out what's actually going on. Because right now, fans are confused, shocked, and honestly, kind of worried. Stick around. So who is Rick Harrison really? Before all the fame, cameras, and crazy deals on Pawn Stars, his story was way different. The guy we see today, the sharp, no-nonsense businessman, actually had a rough start. Rick was born in North Carolina, but ended up growing up in San Diego. Sounds chill, right? Well, not exactly. As a kid, he was diagnosed with epilepsy when he was just 8. That meant missing school? A lot. Eventually, he dropped out completely in high school. But here's where it gets interesting. He didn't give up. Instead of sitting around, Rick started reading like crazy. History, business, all kinds of stuff. That's where all that random trivia knowledge comes from. He basically built his own education from scratch. Now, fast forward a bit. Rick's a teenager helping out with his dad's side hustles. He started figuring out how to spot what's real, what's fake, and what's worth cash. That skill? Super handy later on. Then in the early 80s, the whole Harrison crew moved to Vegas. His dad opened up a little coin shop in '81, and a few years later, they turned it into a full-blown pawn shop. That move, game changer. The coin business was fine, but pawning? That's where the real money was. But it wasn't all smooth. Rick was dealing with shady customers, long hours, and plenty of close calls. It wasn't glamorous, but it built the tough, sharp guy we all recognize today. All right, so let's jump to the early 2000s. By then, Rick wasn't just some random guy running a pawn shop in Vegas. People actually knew him. Locals, collectors, even out-of-towners started showing up, all hoping to score something rare or just see what crazy stuff was in the shop. It had kind of become the spot for weird and valuable finds. Now here's where Rick gets smart. He looks around and goes, you know what? This place is kind of wild. Why not turn it into a show? And honestly, who would have thought that a pawn shop would make great TV? But Rick saw something others didn't. He pitched the idea over and over, got turned down a bunch, but didn't give up. Finally, in 2009, the History Channel took a shot at it. Pawn Stars was born, and boom, it took off fast. The show followed Rick, his son Corey, aka Big Hoss, his dad, the old man, and their buddy Chumley. It wasn't just about buying and selling. It was about the stories behind the stuff, the random history lessons, and yeah, the wild customers too. Rick brought this mix of dry humor, straight talk, and total brainpower when it came to figuring out what something was actually worth. No nonsense, no fluff, just facts. Rick didn't just build a successful shop, he built a brand, from Vegas pawn boss to full-blown TV personality. Not bad for a guy who once had to fight just to stay in school. You know that classic Rick line, "The best I can do is..." Yeah, that line basically became part of pop culture. The second he said it, you just knew someone's dreams of getting rich were about to get crushed. And that's what made Pawn Stars so fun. But it wasn't just about the deals. Here's what really made the show stand out from all the other reality junk on TV. You actually learned stuff. No joke. Rick made sure every episode had some kind of history lesson built in. Whether it was an old coin, a Civil War rifle, or a vintage soda machine, he always had some crazy background info that made you go, wait, what? That's actually cool. And people loved that. It wasn't just guys trying to flip stuff. It was like Antiques Roadshow meets Las Vegas Hustle with a side of dad jokes. That formula worked big time. Under Rick's lead, the gold and silver pawn shop went from being a local spot to a full-blown tourist stop. Folks from all over the world started showing up, just hoping to see Rick. Rick saw the momentum and ran with it. He wrote books, hit the road for meet and greets, and even launched a restaurant. Smart move. He wasn't just a pawn shop guy anymore. He was a brand. As Pawn Stars blew up, Rick didn't just stay behind the counter. He stepped into full-on celebrity mode. Talk shows, magazine interviews, business conferences, you name it, he was there. Kind of wild for a guy who started out just trying to run a family pawn shop in Vegas, right? But here's the thing. People connected with Rick's story. It wasn't flashy. It was real. A guy who didn't finish high school, worked his butt off, and turned a small business into a massive success. That hit home for a lot of folks. Add in his no BS advice on money and business, and suddenly Rick wasn't just a TV guy. He was someone people looked up to. And we can't forget his relationship with the old man. You could tell there was real respect there. Not just for the cameras, like they actually built something together from the ground up. Watching them bounce off each other was one of the best parts of the show. It was family, business, and comedy all rolled into one. In 2018, something tough happened. Rick lost his dad, the old man. And if you watch the show, you know how close they were. They built everything together. After his dad passed, Rick didn't just keep the shop going. He kept it running the same way, with the same values. That says a lot. Now, while the cameras mostly stuck to the business, Rick's personal life, it had its own ups and downs, just like anyone else. He was married to Tracy for a long time, 27 years actually, before they split in 2011. 2 years later, in 2013, he tied the knot again with Deanna Burdett. And this wasn't just some quiet courthouse wedding. Nope. Danny from Counting Cars was the one who officiated it, and Chumley was the ring bearer. Yep, you heard that right. Only in Vegas, right? Even though Rick kept most of his family life out of the spotlight, you could tell he cared deeply about the people around him. Fame, business, the TV hustle, it never fully pulled him away from that. But of course, Rick, being Rick, didn't stop at just the pawn shop. He opened Rick's Rollin' Smoke BBQ and Tavern right next to the store. Good food, good drinks, and a solid way to give fans something extra when they visited. And let's not forget, he wrote a book too. License to Pawn came out in 2011, and it's basically a behind-the-scenes look at his life, his business mindset, and all the stuff you didn't see on camera. Rick's always been hustling. TV or no TV, this guy knows how to turn an idea into something real. Now, if there's one thing Rick's always been good at, it's spotting value. The man has an eye for stuff most of us would walk right past without even noticing. Whether it was a rusty old rifle or a dusty box of baseball cards, Rick had this gift for picking out what might be worth real money. On Pawn Stars, we got to see that skill in action all the time. He dealt with everything: vintage cars, old documents, rare coins, even random pop culture stuff. And while Rick seemed to know a little bit about everything, he was never afraid to call in the pros when something came through the door he didn't recognize. That's what smart business looks like, knowing when to say, hey, let's get a second opinion. And let's be honest, not every deal was a win. Some buys were solid, others, not so much. That's just part of the game. But when it came to things like firearms, watches, or anything tied to American history, Rick was usually on point. Those were his sweet spots, and he turned a lot of those deals into big profits for the shop. One of the coolest things he ever picked up? A 2001 New England Patriots Super Bowl ring. He grabbed it for $2,600, and yeah, it was worth way more. Another time, he bought a bunch of Spanish gold coins from a shipwreck dating all the way back to 1715. I mean, how many people can say they've held real pirate-era treasure in their hands? Rick's whole career has been about more than just making money. It's about knowing what matters, what's rare, and what has a story behind it. That's the stuff that keeps people watching and keeps customers walking through his door. Now look, for all the success Rick's had, things haven't always been smooth sailing. Let's be real, nobody's perfect, and sometimes the choices you make come back around. In 2023, Rick's world got hit hard. Out of nowhere, federal agents showed up and raided his Las Vegas home. Yep, FBI, IRS, and even folks from the Department of Cultural Heritage Protection. Sounds intense, right? That's because it was. And what's wild is nobody knew what it was about at first. No official info, just rumors flying like crazy online. Fans were confused, people close to Rick were shocked. And the internet? Yeah, it went full-on conspiracy mode. Turns out it wasn't just his house. They also hit the gold and silver pawn shop. According to witnesses, they detained people, took computers, grabbed a bunch of documents, and even walked off with some of the store's inventory. Imagine just being there to sell your old watch, and suddenly you're stuck in the middle of a federal raid. Wild. Rick's son Corey was there when it all went down and later said it felt like something out of a movie. And Rick? He stayed calm the whole time. Seriously. As agents led him out of the house, neighbors were already recording with their phones, and those videos hit social media fast. So what was all this about? Well, as the story started to unfold, things got serious. Authorities were looking into possible tax evasion, money laundering, and even claims that the shop had been involved in selling stolen artifacts. Yeah, heavy stuff. Apparently, a few red flags came from banks, and even some old business partners who weren't exactly happy. And then came the blow for fans. Pawn Stars was put on pause. The History Channel released a quick statement saying they were watching the situation and would decide what to do next based on how it all plays out. Even though Pawn Stars was on pause, the gold and silver pawn shop stayed open. Kinda. But let's be honest, the vibe changed. Fewer people were walking in. The buzz around the place? Gone. That dark cloud hanging over Rick? Yeah, it started to hit the business hard. At first, Rick's team came out swinging. They said it was all just a big misunderstanding and that everything would be cleared up soon. His lawyer, David Marshall, big-time Vegas attorney, the kind who usually handles celebrities, said Rick had always run things by the book. No shady stuff, no funny business. That's what they were telling the public. But as time went on, the story started to shift. Authorities began dropping some serious claims. According to them, Rick was involved in a complicated setup where certain rare artifacts were being undervalued on paper to save on taxes, while actually being sold privately for way more. That alone is sketchy, but it didn't stop there. Investigators also said Rick had knowingly bought stolen historical pieces, stuff that belonged to museums or private collectors. We're talking rare documents and high-value artifacts, not your average garage sale finds. And here's where things got even messier. Turns out this whole thing got kicked off by someone who used to work closely with Rick, a whistleblower. They told the feds about some secret bookkeeping system Rick supposedly used to hide certain transactions. Basically, a second set of records for deals he didn't want showing up in the main books. If true, that's a big problem. Eventually, Rick was arrested, but he was out the next day on bond with a court date coming up fast. The charges? Heavy. We're talking tax evasion, money laundering, dealing in stolen property, and even conspiracy to traffic illegally obtained artifacts. Not minor stuff. His lawyer kept saying Rick would fight it all and that this was far from over. Rick's lawyer, David Marshall, didn't back down. He made it clear from the jump, Rick wasn't guilty and was ready to fight every single charge in court. And fight he did. The legal battle dragged on for almost a year. Rick stuck to his story the whole way, saying he was innocent and that the whole thing was being blown out of proportion. But as time went on, things started to look rough. The prosecutors brought out receipts, literally. We're talking financial records, secret text messages, and even people who used to work with Rick. And not just low-level staff. These were folks who said they were told directly by Rick to tweak documents on big-ticket items. That's not the kind of thing a jury ignores. Then came the bombshells. Investigators said Rick had stashed money in offshore accounts, basically trying to hide profits from deals that should have been reported. Not a good look. But what really turned heads was a string of text messages. One of them? A conversation between Rick and some unnamed supplier, talking about how to clean the provenance of an old document from the 1700s. That might sound harmless if you don't know the lingo, but in the collectibles world, that basically means erasing where the item came from. And in this case, that document was allegedly stolen from a university archive. So yeah, that changed the tone fast. Word came out that Rick had supposedly talked about ways to move big chunks of cash without raising flags, basically trying to stay under the radar with large cash deals. Not exactly what you'd expect from someone who built a whole brand on being smart and straight with the facts, right? But even with all that going on behind the scenes, Rick stayed loud and proud in public. He went on conservative talk shows, saying this was all a setup, that he was being targeted because of his politics, or because Pawn Stars had gotten too big. And you know what? A lot of people believed him. His fans had his back hard. There were Free Rick hashtags, protests outside the courthouse, and support groups popping up online. It became a movement. Still, things got real when the arrest report dropped. Suddenly, this guy we all saw as the honest, no-nonsense businessman had a whole other side, one that was a lot more calculating than anyone expected. It caught a lot of people off guard. Now, before we go judging too fast, let's be fair. People mess up, sometimes badly. But even in the middle of all this, Rick's fans didn't forget what he gave them. A ton of folks online started sharing stories, how watching Pawn Stars actually made them care about history, about learning, about paying attention to the little things in life. One comment said, "Rick taught me to love history in a way school never could." That hit hard. And now, they're showing up for him, posting support, building online communities, saying, yeah, he might have messed up, but that doesn't erase the impact he had on us. Even Chumley, who showed up to support Rick every single day of the trial, couldn't hold it together when the sentence was read. He was seen leaving the courtroom fast, clearly shaken. And honestly, a lot of people felt the same way. The sentence shocked everyone, including legal experts. Some said it was way too harsh for the type of crimes involved, but the judge didn't see it that way. They made it clear this wasn't just about money. It was about the damage done to history itself. The judge called Rick out directly, saying, "You've built a public image around protecting history, but behind the scenes, you helped destroy it for profit." That hit hard, especially coming from a courtroom, not the internet. They said Rick wasn't just messing with taxes. He was involved in moving stolen cultural items, things that can't be replaced. And because of that, the judge said the punishment had to fit the weight of those actions. Rick's lawyers jumped into action right after, filing an appeal. They said the sentence was way over the line for a nonviolent crime and asked if Rick could stay out on bond while the appeal went through. The court said, nope. That's when we saw the now viral images of Rick in handcuffs being led out of the courthouse. The guy who once explained rare coins and Civil War pistols on TV was now the headline of every news site, and not in a good way. The reaction? Totally split. Some fans were in total disbelief. They're convinced something went wrong and that Rick didn't deserve what he got. But others, especially folks from museums and historical groups, actually supported the sentence. They said it's about time people took the illegal artifact trade seriously. Meanwhile, Rick's fans are rallying harder than ever. A campaign called Hearts for Harrison has already pulled in over 100,000 signatures, asking for a second look at the case. Supporters are saying loud and clear, yeah, maybe Rick messed up, but this sentence, it doesn't match the crime. Now let's be clear. Nobody's saying Rick should walk free if he actually broke the law. Even Melissa Jenkins, one of the main voices behind the Hearts for Harrison campaign, said it straight. We're not asking for special treatment. We're saying a life sentence for nonviolent crimes isn't justice. It's revenge. And honestly, she's got a point. A lot of people feel like the punishment just doesn't match what Rick was accused of doing. If you're one of those people who think Rick deserves a shot at redemption, there are ways to help. Folks are signing petitions, donating to his legal fund, and even just spreading the word. Because in cases like this, even a small donation or a kind message can go a long way. Rick's son, Corey, said it best. Yeah, my dad made mistakes, but he doesn't deserve to die in prison. And you can feel the weight of that. He's not trying to excuse what happened. He just wants his dad to have a chance to make things right. Meanwhile, the fallout hit fast. The History Channel didn't waste any time. They pulled the plug on Pawn Stars and even yanked reruns off their schedule. In their statement, they said they were deeply disappointed in Rick's actions and that they stand for the legal and respectful handling of historical items. So yeah, it's the end of an era. But is it the end of Rick's story? That part's still up in the air. Now, say what you will about Rick, but before everything went sideways, the guy left a real mark on reality TV and the pawn world. He didn't just build a pawn shop, he built an empire. We're talking bars, restaurants, big plans to expand into other cities. Rick was thinking way beyond Vegas. He took a simple business and turned it into a full-on brand. That kind of hustle, it's rare. Even after his conviction, the gold and silver pawn shop didn't shut down. Rick's son, Corey, stepped up to run things. And yeah, business took a hit at first. People weren't sure what to think. But Corey didn't just sit back. He started rebranding the shop, focusing hard on doing things the right way. He made transparency the priority. He brought in museum experts. He started working with educational groups to make sure everything sold had a clean, traceable history. Basically, he made it clear. This isn't the old pawn game anymore. About 6 months after Rick was sentenced, Corey sat down for a rare emotional interview. You could see how much it weighed on him. Keeping the family business alive while trying to rebuild trust? That's no easy job, but he owned it. He talked openly about the mistakes, the fallout, and what it means to move forward without ignoring the past. Corey put it plainly, "We've got strict new rules now. Everything that comes through the shop gets verified. No shortcuts." He's not hiding from what went wrong. He's owning it. "What happened wasn't okay," he said, "but we're doing the work to fix it. We want to be part of the solution, not the problem." And then there's Chumley. This hit him hard. Rick wasn't just his boss. He was like a second dad. In a podcast, Chumley said, "Rick taught me a lot. Business stuff I'll carry with me forever. But now I'm realizing there was a side of him I either didn't see or didn't want to." You could tell it hurt. For the whole Harrison family, it's been rough. But they're not giving up. They're focused on rebuilding the shop's reputation, standing by Rick during his appeal, and trying to keep the business alive. And surprisingly, Corey stepped up in a big way. The same guy who used to butt heads with Rick on the show is now running the shop full-time and impressing people who once saw him as just the wildcard son. And yeah, it's more than just words. Every Sunday, fans are showing up outside the shop in Vegas, holding prayer circles and just being there. If you can't make it, the family's asking folks to send Nolan in letters, cards, photos, whatever meant something to you from the show. Rick may be locked up, but those little moments still matter. "My dad taught me everything I know," Corey said. "There were some hard lessons in there, but I'm holding on to the good and using it to build something better. We messed up, big time, but this shop has been part of Vegas for over 30 years. I'm going to make sure it lasts another 30. A lot of people are calling Rick's downfall something straight out of a Shakespeare play. A guy who knew so much about history ended up letting those same historical artifacts drag him down. Crazy, right? It's almost like the thing that made him famous turned into the thing that destroyed him. This whole case is still unfolding, and we'll keep bringing you updates as it does. But one thing's clear. Pawn Stars will never be the same, and neither will the Harrison family. Right now, Rick needs all the support he can get. If you've ever enjoyed the show, learned something cool from it, or just appreciated what Rick brought to your screen, this might be the time to give a little back. Whether it's a quick prayer, a kind message, or just a note saying, "Hey, I haven't forgotten what you did for TV." It all matters. The Harrison family has even set up a website where you can leave messages for Rick. They print them out and send them to him in prison. You'd be surprised how much a few words can mean to someone going through the lowest point in their life. Like they said, Rick has always appreciated the Pawn Stars viewers. And now more than ever, knowing you're still in his corner means everything. Thanks for watching. If this story hit you like it hit us, drop a comment, share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates. Whether you support Rick or not, his story has shaken reality TV. Stay tuned. We'll keep you posted as it all unfolds.